Okay, well, hello everybody. This is Greg Herrman again with Herrman Herrman. It's Frequently Asked Questions Friday. Okay, so the first question we have today is, do I recommend a certain body shop? The answer there is no. I never recommend body shops. I discovered a long time ago when we reversed made to a body shop and that car isn't repaired perfectly, they get mad at me. So I quit recommending, and my firm quit recommending body shops years ago. We want you to pick out your own body shop, and then if you guys aren't happy, y'all can take it up with them, and if there's somebody that referred Joe there, then take it up with that person. But we certainly do not recommend any body shops. And believe it or not, it seems like people care more about their cars than they do their body. If I send somebody to a doctor and the doctor, they're not totally happy with the doctor, they can live with that, but I better not send them to a bad body shop or I'll never hear the end of it. So anyway, that's why we do not recommend body shops. The next question was, if an apartment complex has maintenance issues such as a lifted board and I trip over it, what are my legal options if I injure myself? Well, let me say, first of all, before you even think about legal options, make sure you go report it right away and fill out an accident report form, because invariably in this type of case, they'll say, well, he didn't tell us or she didn't tell us, we didn't know. We don't have any indication of that. So if it happens, immediately go report it, and that way there's no question. And try to get the manager out there to look at it, take pictures of it. You should take pictures of it with your iPhone or whatever you've got. If you don't have a phone with a camera, go find somebody that does and take pictures of it, because they will change it or they will fix it before we can get out there generally. Although you'd be surprised, sometimes they don't, and we go out there and it still hadn't been repaired. But the smart thing to do is take a picture immediately and then go report it immediately. Now the apartment complex does have to have some kind of notice that there's something defective, like a lifted board. But they also have a duty to make reasonable inspections. So if they're out making reasonable inspections and they just checked this area and it was fine, and then something happened after that, let's say somebody else comes along that lives there and they damage something and they cause this board to lift, and then you trip over it, nobody's going to say that apartment complex was negligent, because they had a reasonable inspection period, they checked up on it, and every time they checked, everything seemed to be fine. But most of the time what happens is apartment complexes don't go around inspecting their property, and they don't go around looking for defects like this. And so most of the time this thing's probably been that way for a while. If you ask around at other people in the apartment complex, other people probably say, oh yeah, that's been that way for a while, I've noticed it. Hopefully other people have even reported it before. And so definitely if it's been reported before, or it's been that way a long time, then the apartment complex either knew or should have known that this defect existed, and so then yes, they will be responsible. Other than, there is also the issue of your own negligence too. And I think that's kind of the subject of our third question. What if I'm partially at fault? Am I eligible for compensation? So let me just address that here. So what happens is, let's say you go to trial in this case, the defense lawyer is going to say, well, did you see the board first? Were you looking out for your own, for where you were walking? And if it comes across like you weren't paying attention to where you were walking yourself and you're partly at fault, or it was sticking up so far that nobody could have not seen it, then obviously a jury's going to say, well, you know what, we think you're partly at fault for this accident too. Why weren't you walking where you were going? Why weren't you even paying attention? Were you texting and walking? Were you, doing something else? Had you been paying attention as you were walking, you would have seen this board and you wouldn't have stepped on it. You wouldn't have tripped over it. So the defense lawyer almost always tries to put part of the fault on you for whatever accident happens, because if he can, then they don't have to pay as much money. And so the way that works is, let's say the jury finds the apartment complex 90% at fault and you 10% at fault, then you only get to recover 10% of your damages. Same thing, let's say the apartment's 55% at fault and you're 45%. You only get to recover 55% of your damages. And that goes all the way to 50%. So even if you're 50% at fault, you get to recover 50% of your damages. The problem is if you're over 50%, let's say you're 55% at fault and the apartment complex is at 45%, you would think you'd get to recover 55% of your damages, or 45% of your damages for the part they were at fault, but you don't. If you are more than 50% at fault, you don't get to recover no matter what. Even if you were just 51% at fault and the apartment complex, the jury decides is 49%, you'd think you ought to get 49% of your damages. Well, you don't. You get nothing. So if it goes to trial, the defense lawyer will always try to put some negligence on you to try to either block you completely from recovering, or at least reduce the percent that they have to pay you. And so the last part of this second question is, if an apartment complex has maintenance issues such as a lifted board and I trip over it, what are my legal options if I injure myself? So that kind of feeds into the last part of this question. Your legal options are, of course, go talk to a lawyer. And your lawyer can get into more detail with you, but he will explain to you, he or she will explain to you that, here's what happens if we go to court. And if it's truly not your fault and, you feel good about it, then that may be a case. If they don't offer you any money or don't offer you enough money, you would want to go to court on. But if it's pretty iffy, like nobody had ever reported this before, nobody else knew about it, it was sticking up far enough that that you probably should have seen it, or if you admit, hey, I wasn't watching where I'm going, probably going to say, you don't want to go to trial on this kind of case. You're liable to either lose or not get very much. So, but again, a lawyer can explain all that to you in more detail depending on your circumstances. And so that brings up one other issue I'm thinking about it is, don't talk to any insurance adjusters until you retain a lawyer, because the adjuster is going to do the same thing. The adjusters are trained. They're not trained there to just take your information down and to treat you well and to be fair with you. They are trained to save their insurance company money. So they're going to do the same thing the defense lawyer would have done had you gone to trial. They're going to try to get you to admit part of this is your fault and you should have been paying better attention. And had you paid better attention, accident probably wouldn't have happened. So don't talk to any insurance adjusters about it. Come talk to a lawyer. And so finally, as to legal options, lots of people think, oh, if I hire a lawyer, that means I have to sue the insurance company or sue the apartment complex or sue the other person. That is not true at all. We do not file a lawsuit without your permission. Most of the times what we do is we just help you file in a claim, and most of the time we can get the insurance companies just to pay the claim without having to do anything else. Now, there are times that they just refuse to pay and that they don't think it's their fault, or they just say they don't think it's their fault, or they don't think you will file a lawsuit. And then it's up to you whether or not you want to go forward and file a lawsuit. But there's lots of other things you can do before that point. You can also sometimes file a lawsuit and just get the case ready for trial, and they will pay you before you get to trial, and they'll settle it. So, it doesn't mean if you go talk to your lawyer, next thing you know, you're going to be in court and you're going to be cross-examined. So there's lots of other things that can happen. Again, consult a personal injury lawyer about that. So anyway, that is it for today's frequently asked questions. Please submit any questions you have online, either by message or on our Facebook page, and we will see you next Friday. Oh, actually next Friday I might be out of town. Yeah, I will not be here next Friday. So the Friday after that, we'll see you guys on FAQ Friday.